In the vast majority of criminal trials, direct eyewitnesses to the actual commission of the crime do not exist. Most offenses occur in private, leaving the court to reconstruct events entirely after the fact. This diagram illustrates the core mechanical challenge of criminal litigation. On the left, we have the fact in issue, the question of whether the accused committed the act. On the right, the accused. Between them lies a wide, empty gap. To bridge this void, prosecutors rely on circumstantial evidence. They must identify the secondary facts surrounding the event to build a logical path back to the accused. Building this bridge requires strict adherence to the rules of evidentiary relevancy. A court cannot simply accept any related detail. The law demands a specific, logical nexus between the surrounding circumstances and the crime alleged. Without a precise statutory standard to determine which surrounding facts are legally relevant, a court lacks the objective basis needed to move from suspicion to a judgment of guilt. On July 1, 2024, the Bharatiya Sakshya Adhiniyam of 2023 replaced the Indian Evidence Act of 1872. While the legislation updated the framework for a digital era, the logic required for admitting circumstantial evidence remains deeply embedded in the law. The primary mechanism for establishing that circumstantial bridge is Section 5 of the BSA, which corresponds to the former Section 7 of the Evidence Act. Section 5 governs the relevancy of facts that are not the crime itself, but provide its context. It dictates how the events immediately preceding and following the offense become admissible. Welcome to Law Ignite. If you are a law student or advocate looking for rigorous breakdowns of the new criminal laws, make sure to subscribe. Mastering Section 5 is an essential mechanical skill. It provides the legal basis for connecting disparate facts into a coherent and admissible narrative of the offense. This diagram maps the exact statutory language of Section 5. The law expands relevancy outward from the main event through 4 specific pathways. To be admissible, a surrounding fact must constitute the occasion, cause, effect, or opportunity of the fact in issue. Occasion refers to the specific situation or timing that created the environment for the event to occur. It explains the immediate setting of the act. Cause isolates the direct trigger. This is the pre-existing motive, a long-standing financial dispute, or the specific push factor that initiated the wrongful act. Effect encompasses the consequences resulting from the act. This covers physical outcomes like a victim's injuries or behavioral changes in the accused following the incident. Finally, opportunity, or the state of things, represents the surrounding conditions that made the act physically possible for the accused to carry out. These 4 categories act as a judicial filter. They allow courts to admit evidence that is logically bound to the crime, while filtering out coincidental facts that lack probative value. The bare act itself grounds these definitions in practical illustrations. Consider the example of a robbery. If a victim is seen displaying a large sum of money shortly before being robbed, that display legally establishes the occasion for the crime and the cause that likely triggered it. Let's look at a second statutory illustration involving a fatal poisoning. This timeline tracks the victim's documented state of health prior to the event. The victim's health status and symptoms prior to the poisoning constitute the state of things. This makes those facts relevant because they help determine the opportunity and timing for the administration of the substance. These illustrations demonstrate that a court must evaluate the environmental context, the specific conditions before and after the incident, to understand the crime itself. The most significant jurisprudential application of Section 5 is the last seen together theory. This timeline illustrates the core logical inference of the doctrine. At point A, the accused and the victim are seen together alive. At point B, shortly thereafter, the victim is found dead. The law permits an inference that the survivor is connected to that death. For this theory to be legally applicable, the prosecution must establish a strict proximity of time and place. This proximity is required to eliminate alternative explanations. The time gap must be so narrow that the possibility of a third party intervening between the last seen moment and death is highly improbable. The last seen theory is a manifestation of Section 5's opportunity and occasion, converting a narrow timeline into a specific, admissible link in the chain of circumstantial proof. When the prosecution proves this narrow proximity, the trial dynamics shift significantly. The focus moves to Section 106 of the Evidence Act. This principle dictates that when a fact is especially within the knowledge of a person, the burden of proving that fact lies upon them. The accused is now knowledge allows the court to draw an adverse inference. However, the Supreme Court of India maintains strict guardrails on this doctrine. In the ruling of Anjan Kumar Sarma v. State of Assam, the court emphasized the limits of this inference. The court clarified that the last seen theory is strictly corroborative. It cannot serve as the sole basis for a criminal conviction. If the accused fails to provide a satisfactory explanation under Section 106, the court may draw a negative inference, but the prosecution must still provide other incriminating circumstances to complete the chain of guilt. The last seen theory requires the accused to explain facts within their knowledge, but the Supreme Court ensures it is never used as a shortcut to bypass the requirement of an independent evidentiary chain. This brings us back to the original dilemma, the gap between the accused and the fact in issue. Prosecutors use Section 5 to forge links across this void, starting with the cause, like a motive, and the occasion, established by the last seen moment. Finally, they attach the effect, such as the recovery of stolen property. Section 5 ensures this chain is complete. The circumstances must interlock so tightly they leave no reasonable ground for any conclusion other than guilt. While the transition to the BSA modernizes the system, the standard for circumstantial relevancy remains the same. The principles of cause, effect, and opportunity are still the foundation of circumstantial proof. For law students and litigators, understanding how these statutory links interact is what separates a basic understanding of the law from the ability to manage complex trials. Thank you for watching Law Ignite. If you found this breakdown valuable, like the video and subscribe. Comment below with which section of the new criminal laws you want us to decode next. In the eyes of the law, circumstantial facts connected through Section 5 create a chain of proof just as conclusive as direct testimony.